Amen. What a beautiful song. That reminds me of, as we were singing, the great announcement that came right before the Great Commission. Jesus gathered his disciples and he said, guys, all authority in heaven and on earth belongs to me. Therefore, go and make disciples. And I'm not going to leave you on your own. I'm going to be with you to the very end of the age, and I'm going to fill you with my Spirit's power. All you need to do is walk with me and surrender, as Ryan just said, surrender to me. I'm already working. I'm amazing. I'm powerful. I'm glorious. I'm working all around you. All you got to be willing to do is to just submit, see where I'm working, and yield to the leading of my Spirit and participate in the most amazing adventure that life could offer you. That's what he's offering us today as his people. You know, I started this series with a quote from Kyle Idleman. I'm actually going to end our series today with the same quote. He said, I don't know of any person who doesn't want to make a difference in the world. Nobody grows up dreaming of waking up, going to work, heading home, watching Netflix, scrolling through social media, and then doing it all over again the next day until their last breath. Just day after day after day, just the grind. I added to this quote, and I know it could even sound sacrilegious to some of us, but how about even just coming to church week after week after week? But that's really all I do. I'm a church member. I attend week after week. We all want to be used to change the world, is how he ended his quote. But you know what? As I honestly thought about that, do we? Or are we satisfied with kind of this life that was just described? I think from some of our conversations, even some of the conversations I've been a part of, from our words and our actions, we are satisfied with it. This is our life because it's all we ever talk about. Is there more? Don't we want to make a difference? We were created by God and empowered to make a difference in the world around us as his kingdom citizens, as his disciples, to be used by God. But sometimes it just feels like it's not happening. What are we missing? What is it that we're missing? There's this nagging sense that we ought to be doing something. I know we've all been there. There's got to be more. I ought to be doing something more. There's got to be some meaning, purpose, mission that we're supposed to be a part of, but we can't quite wrap our minds around what that is. And so in the meantime, we sit in church, we try to pay attention. You know what? I'm going to stay awake this week while Don's up there preaching. We try to pay attention, we put some money in the plate, we behave as best we can, and we hope when we get to heaven, man, he's not just going to nail us to the wall for not doing whatever it was that we were supposed to be doing while we were here on earth. Reminds me of a California man named Larry Walters, whose story I read this past week. Some of y'all are going to maybe remember this guy as I start sharing his story. Larry went to the Army-Navy surplus store in his hometown, and he bought 42 used weather balloons. Now, y'all know those aren't just the little balloons that you get at Kroger. These are giant weather balloons. 42 of them he bought. He inflated them and attached them to a lawn chair that he had secured to the back of his pickup truck. Now, how many of y'all have ever wanted to admit it? Yeah, there's a lot of rednecks here today. And we have thought about doing something like this, I promise, right? And it always begins with, hold my beer, right? I'm gonna get in this lawn chair and I'm just gonna see where these weather balloons take me. And that's exactly what he did. With several friends watching, he climbed into the chair, strapped in, and took off. Now, he had a 100-foot rope that he was hoping was going to stay connected, but guess what happened? Yeah, once he got to the end of that rope, that sucker broke loose, and Larry takes off. He was hoping, a friend later said, to observe the neighborhood from a slightly different angle and gain a new perspective on his life. Yeah, listen to this, he took nothing with him but a peanut butter sandwich, a 6-pack of beer, and a fully loaded BB gun. So he's taking off into the stratosphere in a Sears and Roebuck lawn chair, an aluminum lawn chair with 42 weather balloons, and that's what he's going to take with him. 2.5 hours later, the Los Angeles International Airport reported an unidentified flying object in the skies above LAX at nearly 16,000 feet. Now, you know how the air is thin up there. He's struggling to breathe. I think at one point he may have even passed out, lost consciousness. He's starting to experience frostbite. Lawn Chair Larry was now 3 miles into the sky and 100 miles from his original launch site. The pilot of the 737 who first spotted Larry said, "Well, I see what looks like a perfectly still man sitting in is that a lawn chair?" I mean, can you imagine air traffic control getting that message from a 737? So in order to rescue Larry, who had dropped his BB gun, by the way, right? We know what his plan was. I mean, us rednecks, we know. We're just going to get up there, yeah, and we'll shoot a few of them, and we'll gently glide back down. Yeah, there's a picture of Lawn Chair Larry. So in order to rescue him, whose BB gun had dropped out of his chair, right? He had managed to shoot a few balloons, so he did start to eventually drift down a little bit to the point where SWAT teams were able to lasso him and lower him safely to the ground. Now, his friend said that he had shot up into the air like he'd been fired from a cannon. And once that happened, he panicked and did the only thing he knew how to do in a stressful situation, and that was break open the 6-pack. On the ground, after being brought back to consciousness, Larry was promptly issued a $4,000 ticket by local police for the obstruction of airport traffic, but he later got it reduced to only $1,500. A local journalist then asked him 3 questions. He said, "Larry, were you scared?" Larry said, "Yes." And actually, he said a few more words. But since we're in church, we're just going to leave it at, "Yes, I was scared." "Larry, would you do it again?" "No." At least he's a quick learner. "Larry, why did you do it?" And here's what I want us to, here's why Larry did it. "I just got tired of always sitting around." I just got tired of always sitting. Is this all there is? Here's a really sad kind of appendix to this story. Larry committed suicide a few years later after this. Yeah. I just got tired of always sitting around. You know, as I thought about that, I think there are a lot of people just doing life and even doing church that feel the same way as Larry. I'm just tired of sitting around. Isn't there more? There's got to be something more. I need a different perspective. I need to see maybe the world from a different angle. What is it that I'm missing? And I'm telling you, it's not to strap yourself in a lawn chair. That's not the answer. We feel like we're supposed to be doing something in the mission of God, but we don't quite know what it is. I'm telling you, that's the purpose of this series for the last several weeks. I hope we've been challenged. I hope our eyes have been opened to who God has created us to be. He wants us to become a disciple, but not stop there, but also be a part of making disciples. Therefore, go be a part of this amazing kingdom purpose and mission that I have for your life. How can we put all of our energy, our time, our dollars into that main purpose here at Springdale, to go and make disciples? We need a new culture. We need a new scorecard, what we measure, what we value, okay, this is how we measure success in our church body. The love relationships that we're making, the spiritual progress, maturity. People are becoming like Christ. They're following him. They're becoming like him. They're joining Jesus in his mission to save the lost in the world around us. There's the measure of success. And to get there, we have to shift our thinking, our priorities, and most of all, our practices. So I'm going to give you the message version of all of our disciple shifts that we've talked about so far. I'm just going to paraphrase these shifts that we've talked about. We got to understand, I'm not a church member, I'm a disciple maker. I'm not just a church member, I am a disciple maker. I'm not just here to get educated, to cram my mind full of facts and right information. My goal is to live in obedience to all that God is teaching me. What's the Holy Spirit saying to me right now, and what am I going to do in response to that? How am I going to take that next step of obedience to respond to what he's saying to me? I'm not a spectator, a consumer of all that the church has to offer, programs for me and my family. I'm here for hands-on training in how to become a disciple and make disciples. That's what I'm here for, not to be a spectator or a consumer. I'm not going to get busy in lots of activities and be satisfied with surface-level relationships. I'm here to enter into life-on-life, authentic, accountable, discipling relationships with other people who are on the same path. I want to be hungry and humble and teachable and to come alongside others. Will you join me, walk with me as we grow together to become better disciples of Jesus? That's what it's all about. That's where life and purpose is found. Now today we've come to the final shift, disciple shift number 5, from accumulating believers to deploying disciples. Now, a lot of times, this is how we measure success. How can we gather as many people here into the building on Sundays, right? And if we have a huge attendance, then let's pat ourselves on the back because we have just accumulated a lot of people in the building, right? As many people as we can in programs, in activities, and that's our measure of success. We have to shift our focus from measuring that. It is important that you're here. It is important that we're gathered together here for worship every Sunday so we can hear what God is saying to us, so that we can be renewed and fueled. This is fuel for the mission. Worship together and relationships with one another. This is important. But what's even more important is sending ourselves out after this service is over. Not just accumulating believers, but sending out disciples, scattering into our homes, our neighborhoods, our schools, our workplaces, the soccer fields, the sports complexes, the civic organizations, the YMCA, wherever it is. Scattering, equipped and motivated to share our faith with others. Being the church by making disciples. That's the measure of success. If we want to return to Jesus-style disciple making, we have to shift from just going to church to a building and shift that to spiritually intentional love relationships. How can I help others follow Christ? It's not another thing that we do, it's how we live, it's our lifestyle. We've said this before. We understand church is not a building, right? We know that. Church is, it's not a physical location. It's not 3016 Selma Street. You know what? This is just brick and mortar. This is a building with electricity. You are the church. We know that. We understand that. It's not an event. The church is the people of God set apart for the mission of God, filled with His power and presence so that His purpose, His purposes are accomplished every day, everywhere. Is that how you see yourself? The people of God set apart for the mission of God, filled with His power, and joining Him where He's at work. Wherever you are on a regular basis, where you've been given influence. Do you believe that? And better yet, are we practicing that as His people? Let's go back to our simple definition of a disciple that we found in Matthew 4:19, when Jesus said, follow me, simple invitation, follow me, and I will make you, what's that last part? Fishers of men. Come and follow me, be my disciple, and I will make you. I'm going to remake you. I'm going to do a transforming work in your heart, your mind, your will, your priorities, your life. I'm going to do that work of transformation. For what purpose? So that you can become a fisher of men. You see, those words are missional. This is a call to action. It's a commissioning in your life and in my life. Here's the purpose I have for you. I want you to join my mission of making disciples, of reaching the lost. How about John 20:21? Jesus said, as the Father has sent me, now I am sending you. Okay, we just said the great announcement, right? The great announcement was all authority in heaven and on earth belongs to me. Therefore, there's the Great Commission. Go and make disciples. I like to call John 20:21 now the great handoff. I'm going back to the Father. I'm going to send my Spirit to fill you. As the Father has sent me, now I'm handing it off. I am sending you. God is this amazing sending God. Didn't He send His best to save us? He sent His one and only Son. Jesus is referred to as sent 44 times in the New Testament. And now, after He has died and been resurrected and risen to the Father, as His disciples, we take on that same identity. We are now sent in His name. So if Jesus sends us as the Father sent Him, we have to position ourselves for a greater purpose than living for ourselves. You know, on Friday, as we were talking about the message, that's really the crux of the matter. This is everything. We have to position ourselves for a greater purpose than living for ourselves. I don't want to do that. I kind of am comfortable in the life that I'm living right now. I may feel kind of empty, but hey, at least it's predictable, it's comfortable. I do get up and I go to work and I come home and I scroll or I watch Netflix and I have a nightcap so I can just go to sleep, and then I get up the next day and do it all over again. We can't keep living that way and be a part of what God has for us. Jesus said, if anyone wants to come and be my disciple, you need to deny yourself. See, that's the ground floor. That's the first step. You need to be willing to deny yourself, take up your cross daily, and follow me. That means I'm out in front, and you see me as the authority, the truth of your life, and you're responding in obedience to where I'm leading you. Follow me. Listen to what Jesus said in John 12:23-26. He said, the hour has now come for the Son of Man to receive great glory. See, He had come and done everything the Father had asked Him to do. I'm telling you the truth, a grain of wheat remains no more than a single grain unless it is dropped into the ground and dies. And if it does die, then it produces many grains. Those who love their own life will lose it. Those who hate their own life in this world will keep it for life eternal. Whoever wants to serve me must follow me. And my Father will honor anyone who serves me. Did you catch that in Jesus' words? To experience life, we have to be willing to die. It can't just be about me, a single person, a single grain. I've got to be willing to die to self so that his kingdom purposes can be accomplished and multiplied through me. That's what Jesus did. You know what? When we follow our master, don't we become like him? Yeah, that's why we follow him, so that we become like him, like Jesus. Putting aside self and seeking God first. Actually, death is the doorway to life. That's what Jesus is saying here. If you'll die to self, you're going to find the life that you're so desperately looking for. That abundant life and purpose and meaning. That's what you're going to find. Whoever wants to serve me must follow me, and my Father will honor anyone who serves me. This is actually the goal of missional living. Dying to self, to see the primary purpose of our lives being to represent Christ to those around us. That's what we're talking about. So the question becomes, do you see the primary purpose for being in your place or position is to further God's mission? Do I see myself that way? It's why he chose you. It's why he empowered you. If we want to live the way that Jesus lived, we got to center our lives around what was the core of his life, living sent. And that requires a kingdom perspective and kingdom priorities. Understanding God wants to use me. He wants to use, even in my brokenness, even though I haven't arrived yet, it's not about me. It's about your spirit at work through me. God wants to use me. I'm filled with his spirit. God's plan to reach the world is ordinary people filled with the spirit walking in obedience. What Jesus has done for me, I just want to do that for other people in love relationships. How about Matthew 28:19? Therefore, go. Go. Did he say, therefore, go to church every Sunday for the rest of your life? That's not what he said. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. That means, that word go means that we intentionally enter into relationships with lost people. But here's the problem. We aren't intentionally building relationships with lost people. That's what therefore go means, but I think the evidence shows this is not what we're doing. Listen to some statistics from the Barna Group in a book called Reviving Evangelism. Actually, the way that they described us reaching out to lost people, they said evangelism is on life support in most churches. It's on life support. And they said, how can we even call ourselves evangelical anymore if we're not sharing the good news with lost people? Right? That's an oxymoron. How can we call ourselves evangelicals? And that's a descriptor of who we're supposed to be, right? People who are so captivated by the gospel and the good news that we just can't wait to share that with other people. Who he is, what he's done in my life, what he's doing right now, what he can do in your life. The Barna Group found that nearly 60% of professing Christians haven't had even 3 spiritual conversations with a lost person in the last year. They also found nearly 50% of professing Christians between the ages of 22 and 36 believe that telling people about Jesus in order to convert them is wrong. In other words, most Christians are introducing lost people to Jesus, and many young Christians flat out refuse to. I can't force my religion on anybody else. Right? That's a prevailing attitude between the ages of 22 and 36. Telling people about Jesus in order to convert them is wrong. How has that entered into our thinking? Lastly, Barna found that roughly 40% of professing Christians don't have a close friend who isn't a Christ follower. In other words, part of the reason most churches in North America aren't making disciples who make disciples is because we're living in a Christian bubble. Right? We're insulated, we're cut off. And I think we were sincere in our efforts, right? We want to protect ourselves from the world and the influence. But what we've actually done is shot ourselves in the foot in the process. Because now we don't even have relationships with lost people, the people in our lives. Now, some of you might be thinking, Don, I don't come alongside of lost people that I know to help them to trust and follow Jesus, but hey, I do invite them to church. And you guys, you and Ray and the staff and the professionals here, y'all can do a much better job of introducing them to Jesus to help them trust and follow him. And I'm here to tell you, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Inviting somebody to church to help them learn more about Jesus, to actually follow Jesus. But this is just one tactic. This is one way we can do it, and it's become, really for most of us, the only way we're willing to do it, right? I'm only willing to invite them, let somebody else show them Jesus. We act like it's the only or the most effective tactic, but I'm going to show you this morning it's really not as effective as we think it is. And let me show you two reasons why. Listen to this quote for more research. Increasingly in a post-Christian society, right? Can you believe that? Like this used to be a Christian nation where really the prevailing culture was open to Christian ideals. We're not in that place anymore. We're actually in a post-Christian society. In a post-Christian society, unbelievers will simply not make their way into our churches no matter how attractive we make them. This is from facts, right? This is from the evidence. It doesn't matter about your building. It doesn't matter how great your coffee is. It doesn't matter how great your lighting and your smoke machine is. And you're putting all your time, your dollars, your energy into those things. That's not where it is. That's not where we're going to be most effective. Here's another one that's even more shocking. According to World Christian Trends, in North America, it costs the church $1.5 million per baptism. And I know y'all are like, what does that mean? Because Jordan said the same thing on Friday. He was like, I don't understand what that means. Let me. In other words, if all churches in North America, okay, all the churches in North America took the money that they used to buy land, buy buildings, build buildings, hire a staff, create an experience, market their experience, and run programs to retain members, and then divide that by the number of people who were baptized, it would come out to roughly $1.5 million per baptism. So again, it's not as effective as we think it is, the way that we've just done things for so long. What does the evidence show us? These tactics we're primarily using aren't nearly as effective as every single follower of Jesus living a lifestyle of introducing lost people to Jesus and inviting them to trust and follow him. And that's been Jesus' strategy since the beginning, right? But somehow we've just gotten away from that. Every single one of us being a part of this mission. It's what Jesus did, it's what his 12 disciples did. It's what led to the explosion of disciples being made in the first century church. But guess what? Satan is here today, and he's still in your ear convincing you can't be this person. No, God can't use me. God doesn't want to use me. That now I'll just keep kind of doing it the way we've always done it. Ever struggle with any of these? I don't feel qualified. Right? Some of the excuses that I don't feel qualified. Let's go back to Acts 1:8. Here's an exercise for us. When we read this verse, I want you to insert your name, okay? It starts off with, but you, and instead of but you, replace you with your name, all right? We're going to read it together and insert your name for you, all right? Let's do it. But Don will receive, wait, let's start over. See, y'all didn't, let's do this again. I heard like 3 people out there. Okay, let's do it again. But Don will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witness. Witnesses, right? But Brooke, but Emmett, but Jerry, but Joy, but anybody in this room today, but you will receive power to be my witness. That's why you've been empowered. That's why you've been chosen. The same power that raised Christ from the dead. See, a lot of times we think it depends on us. We got to somehow make it happen. That's not the truth. It's His power in and through you. How about busyness? Or I'm in my bubble. I'm too busy. So here's a question for you. Do I live at a pace that allows me to be available to those around me? If this is about relationships, we're talking about relationships. Do I live at a pace that allows me to be available to those around me? Or are we just too busy? We're overcommitted. What are some of the time stealers in my life? Is it Netflix? Is it video games? Is it my phone or social media? Or am I even overcommitted with church activities? These things aren't evil. They just swallow up the margin of our lives if we aren't intentional. How about fear? I'm fearful to do this. And here's why we're fearful, okay? I'm going to go ahead and we have been fearful to do this for so long because we feel like it's got to be this canned presentation, right? Well, I don't know the Romans road that well. Is it Romans 3:23 and then Romans 5:8? I'm not sure if I've got all the, see, we think it's got to be this canned presentation one time, and if we mess up or they don't accept Jesus, then, well, I guess that I won't ever do that again. This is not what we're talking about. This is not what we're talking about. Here's something for us to think about. Do you think the first century disciples went and took evangelism classes? No, there's no evidence of that. You know what? We need to set up evangelism classes to help you, walk. No, they were just in love with Jesus. They were enamored by the gospel, what He had done for them. The new life and the new freedom and the joy and the peace, and they're loving people, and it's just moving from house to house to house, and it's spreading through the culture and society through relationships. They're selling their properties, and they're helping each other, and they're meeting together, constantly loving one another, and the world can't believe it, and the God is adding to their numbers daily. Right? They're not worried, I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to get these verses wrong because I don't have them all down yet. It's just being Jesus to people. Being the living Jesus. We have experiences and life lessons, and we do know verses that we can share with people. How about just complacency or indifference, apathy? Honestly, I just don't care, right? It's like the old Pink Floyd song, I have become comfortably numb. I mean, that's just numbers. You said that there's 3 billion people dying and going to hell, and that number doesn't even faze me. I'm comfortably numb. Why? Because I've got my own stuff. I've got my own life. I'm busy with my own life right now. C.S. Lewis in the Screwtape Letters, he said, this is a quote from a senior devil. He said, I, the devil, will always see to it that there are bad people. Your job, my dear Wormwood, is to provide me with the people who do not care. Right? This senior devil is teaching this younger devil, Wormwood, how can we get believers not to do what they're supposed to do? Here's how you do it. Provide me with people who don't care. Whatever you have to do to make them stay apathetic, indifferent, comfortably numb. Finally, Maybe this is one for us. I'm not really living the kind of life I would want others to follow. The last thing I would want others to see is how I actually live in my home, at work, where I go, what I do. Can we see that that's a problem? That's an indicator of a lack of relationship, a love of the world. We may come to church in our Sunday best, carry a Bible, put some money in the plate, but when we walk out the doors, do we turn it off and no longer live as followers of Christ? And Jesus would say, are you sure, my disciple? Are you sure that you're my disciple? Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I ask you to do? A disciple will deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow Jesus. Even in the midst of our struggles, our joys, our pains, our sinfulness, our godliness, we are genuinely striving to follow Jesus. That's what people just want real, right? You're willing, even in your brokenness, to admit, you know what? Gosh, I didn't do it right there. This is what Jesus wants. This is what I'm striving for in my life. If we're truly following Jesus, we're able to invite others into every area of our life. Hebrews 12:1, Paul pleads with us, strip off anything that slows us down or holds us back. All that stuff that's just tripping us up, keeping us tangled up, we got to be willing to just eliminate it, to get rid of it, so that we can run that race with perseverance. He has positioned you, you're where, that's your mission field. He has divine encounters planned, the win, the opportunities to be used by Him, empowered by Him, the coming together of the right people. I heard a person say it this way, it's the coming together of the right people at the right time in the right place for the right reason. The Spirit of God is moving you into people's lives so that you can fulfill the Great Commission to make disciples. You know, I see a couple of guys right now that are just blowing me away, that are taking this really to heart and running with it. One of them's Emmett back there, and Wayman, my neighbor. He is really, in the last month or so, man, God is getting a hold of his heart, opening his eyes to guys in his life that just need a touch from Jesus. I see Emmett just doing it, man. And I'm like, I want to be like Emmett. I want to be like Emmett because he's doing this. The Holy Spirit is preparing all of us, every single one of us, for a purpose, to be his witness in the world. Listen to 1 Peter 3:15. Always be ready to give an answer when someone asks you about your hope. Are you ready? See, that's all I'm just telling others what I've seen, heard, and experienced. Isn't that what a witness does? When you're on the witness stand, do you have to make stuff up? No, all you do is report what you saw, what you heard, what you experienced. That's all a witness does. That's what you're doing. That's what a witness, this is who he is. I've seen him work in my life. He can do it in yours. How about Luke 10:2? The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into his fields. Guess what? You're the answer to your own prayer. Right? To send more workers into his fields, the softball fields and the baseball fields and the lumber yard and the warehouse and the office building and the classroom. It's you living life with gospel intentionality, love relationships, helping people to know and follow Jesus. Offering ourselves as the living Jesus to others. See, here's the key concept. Don't make the mistake of making missional another thing to add to your schedule. Instead, make your life missional. Right? The regular rhythms of your life already. You're not adding to, you're becoming more intentional with the time we already have. Ray said this a couple of weeks ago. Are we already eating? Yeah. You can tell, I eat regularly, okay? I'm already eating. So who can I eat with? There's the question. I already have hobbies. Who can I do those hobbies with? I'm already playing golf. Who can I do that with? I'm already building cabinets. Who can I do that with? Ray was talking about, he's got his 45th class reunion coming up. There's no way that guy's old enough to be going to a 45th class reunion. And the way he talked about it, most of us would be like, yeah, I want to go and see how fat everybody got and how bald they are and all that kind of stuff. But Ray's like, yeah, I want to go because I know God's going to create opportunities for me to share him in that setting. It's like, how do we not have that mindset, right? Why is that such a struggle for us to live that way? Everywhere we go, whatever we're doing, to live missional, to live sent. So let's get practical. I want you to think through your spheres of influence right now. Your family, your neighbors, co-workers, interest groups, volunteer organizations, public places. And as you think through each group of people, write down every person you already know who doesn't follow Jesus. Hey, in all those different spheres of influence, start writing those names down. Here are the people I know who don't follow Jesus. Now, for some of us, according to the statistics, we're going to sit down and we're not going to be able to come up with a single name. That's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to get to know lost people in our life. Ask God to help you meet people in those spheres. And then start to pray for those people by name daily. And in the time that you already spend with them, use your words and actions to show them the love of Christ. Who he is in your life. Just share that with other people. See, we overcomplicate it. It's just about love relationships. Following Jesus' example. You know what Jesus did? He joined the Father where he was at work. Jesus said in John 5:19, I tell you the truth, the Son of Man can do nothing by himself. He does only what he sees the Father doing. See, I'm just joining the Father who's already at work. As you go, God, where are you at work? That's all it is, a simple question. And then join in. Listen to people around you in your life. There aren't many listeners out there anymore. There's a lot of talkers. Let's practice listening. And as we're listening, look for windows of opportunity. You know how God often breaks through for people? When they're going through difficult times or they're really some transition times in life or really hard times in life. That's when God finally can break through. People going through divorce or first-time parents or terminally ill or in the hospital, couples with marriage problems, recently unemployed, financial problems, parenting issues and struggles, addiction issues. Jesus said himself, I didn't come for the healthy. I didn't come for those who had it all together and are healthy. I came for the hurting, the helpless, the sick, the lonely, the broken, and we know people in our lives in those situations. And they're going to be more responsive to God during those times. How many of you here personally came to Christ through circumstances like this in your own life? Yeah. I knew when hands would go up everywhere. This is how a lot of us really finally come to Christ. Seek out information that will be helpful. Share that with them. How many podcasts are we listening to on a weekly basis? Right? Okay, young people. Yeah. Podcasts have really become everything for our younger people. And isn't it so easy to just send a link to a podcast to a friend? Now, let me speak to the older crowd. Books. Okay? You've all read a book, hadn't you? You held that thing in your hand with pages and you turn it, that old-fashioned book, right? Gosh, I read this book. It really helped me through a difficult time, and you can hand that book to somebody instead of just sending them a link to a podcast. All right? Or an article or a sermon. My pastor they did a series on this not too long ago. Send them the link to the series to help people. Share your own spiritual experiences. I used to feel like that until something completely changed my outlook on life. Care for physical needs, just like Jesus, not just spiritual needs, physical needs. People who are hungry, people who are hurting, people who are in the hospital, people who are struggling financially. Share what you have, your gifts through service. You know, those small things often have the biggest impact. Wow, that person actually, nobody has ever cared for me. Care for others. Now, I want you to hear me. We aren't devising gimmicks to get at people with the gospel. Don't you hate salesmen? Oh, maybe I'm the only one. Maybe I ought not to admit that. Okay? Let me soften that. I don't like salesmen at all. Okay? And I can get when you have an ulterior motive, right? When you're just trying to sell me something, sell me whatever it is. That's not what we're trying to do with people because, man, people don't like that. Here's what we're doing. We're just being Jesus to people in our lives. That's what we're talking about. Sharing his love, the love that he's shown us with others. Be real and transparent what Jesus is doing in you, how he is a daily reality in your life. Share your regrets. Share the hard stuff, not just the good stuff, your regrets, your painful experiences. The world needs to see how God is real, how he's real in your life, with your time, your money, your strength, your system of values, not perfectly, but even in our weakness, this is who God is, what he's doing. Joy in the midst of pain, faith in the midst of doubt, love and grace instead of retaliation. Ask those questions that go deeper, that remember the conversation quadrants that we talked about, move from casual to meaningful to spiritual to Jesus. Ask questions. What are you struggling with in your life right now? How can I pray for you? How can I help you? Be available. You know, relationships take time. They don't just happen overnight. We've got to be available to people. It's a process. So share your time, your life, meals, and conversations. As we close today, whether you're a business person, a stay-at-home mom, a grandparent, a classmate, a neighbor, a coach, all God wants you to do is use what he's given you. To see the primary purpose of your life to be his representative. To be the living Jesus to those people around you. Just to do that, to live that way. Don't stop at just coming to church or even being a disciple yourself. Come alongside others. That's really the challenge for this year. How can we come alongside others? Let me pray for you today. Father,